Delighted to welcome you. I'm Holly Manaseri. I'm an associate professor here at the Warner School and chair of the Ed Leadership Department. And it's just my pleasure to welcome you to what is now the third in our installment of our Leaders for Equity series that we began this semester. We are just really excited about how this series has grown. And just a little background, the intended audience is for school building and school district leaders, aspiring administrators. We've got several folks who are currently in our Warner program here, and then teacher leaders. And really the purpose is to bring folks together to kind of talk about problems of practice as they relate to equity issues, and give practitioners the opportunity to talk about the challenges and successes they're having with various issues. We've structured this by topic area. So the first in our series focused on inclusion. Last month we focused on culturally responsive instruction. And this month we're really excited to talk about leveraging technology. So just a few norms before we turn it over to our esteemed facilitators here. As Dave has already mentioned, we'd love to make sure that folks are keeping their microphones muted just for saving on background noise. We love it when you put things in the chat box, so we definitely will be monitoring that if you've got some questions. In the past, we've had folks, kind of share some resources that are relevant. We share that chat. As Dave mentioned, we are recording this session, so just be mindful of that. And really, we would love for this to be interactive and engaging. We do have some folks who will be speaking as part of our panelists. So we'll try to leave some time at the end for that Q&A. If we don't get to you again, using the chat box as a means for communicating with us, what's on your mind or some follow-up that you'd love to have works really well for us. Andrea, if you're here, if you're still on, I'll give you a chance to say hi and introduce yourself. I know she said she had an unstable internet connection right now. So Andrea Cutt is here and working with some tech stuff. And Andrea is the director of our K-12 school leadership program. And really, we just are so thankful for the opportunity to engage with you and our folks that are here to help us out today. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Raffaella Borasi, who is the executive director of our LEDA Center here at the Warner School, LEDA standing for Learning in the Digital Age, and Dr. Dave Miller, who is an associate director of the LEDA Center. And I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. So we are also quite happy to have this opportunity to facilitate this session because we're really living in a very interesting time, very unique and new for all of us. And it's exciting to have the possibility to hear from different people, different administrators in K-12, how you're dealing with this emergency situation. Given the original topic being technology and also the particular focus of our center, we chose again to focus the conversation today on one particular aspect of this emergency, which is how administrators like you have used technology, have leveraged technology to try to meet the needs of instruction. And we realized that while online technologies have allowed us to do things we could not even think about a decade ago, at the same time, it has not been easy to leverage that potential, and different schools have been able to do different things depending on their current situation and a lot of other constraints. So we thought it would be really interesting to start the conversation by having 4 panelists talk about the experiences in their specific school. We asked 4 people that are all representative of members of the K-12 Digital Consortium. This is a group of school districts and BOCES in the region that was established a few years ago to exchange information and learn from each other and support each other on issues related to using technology in K-12 schools. But the 4 people who are talking today will be representing schools that are quite different in terms of urban, suburban, rural, and also different positions within the school. And I thought the best would be, again, to have Dave Miller, who has been our liaison with the consortium, to introduce them. Before he does that, I just wanted to say a few words about how we organize the session. We are planning to ask a first pretty broad question to each of the 4 panelists so that they can tell their story about how they use technology in the classroom in this period of emergency. And then we will open up for some clarifying questions, and then ask another series of questions to the panelists, and then open up for more general Q&A. As Holly said, we want to make it interactive, but at the same time, we wanted to give some time to the panelists to, again, tell their story. So with that, I'll pass it to Dave, who is going to, again, introduce our panelists and the first question.
Thank you, Raffaella, and I'm pleased to introduce our 4 panelists this afternoon. We have Cheryl Dauberton, who is the Director of Secondary Education at the East Irondequoit Central School District; Kevin Whitaker, who's the Assistant Superintendent of Instruction at the Geneva City School District; Sean Nelms, who's the Superintendent of the East EPO; and Gordy Baxter, who's the Staff Development Administrator for Instructional Technology at EduTech at Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES. So welcome, panelists. Thank you so much for being here today. And we'll do the first question, and the order for responses will go with Cheryl first, and then Kevin, and then Sean, and then Gordy. So our first question for our panel today is, as a school leader during this time of disruption, how have you been using technology to support the learning and well-being of all your students? Tell us about some key challenges and success stories.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to hear some stories. So before I start to speak about our district, I wanted to just acknowledge how amazingly hard teachers and leaders are working right now. What an insane experiment this hall has been. And as we look back and start to gather information about what worked and what didn't work, I know we will do that with grace. Everybody that I know is making snap decisions every moment, every day, and everyone's just doing the best they can. So I just want to acknowledge that and appreciate that. For those of you who don't know East Irondequoit, we are just outside the city of Rochester, just north of Rochester. It's a little small community, very tight-knit, a lot of family connections. Our district's pretty diverse. We about 65% of our families are families of color, and we speak 20 different languages, last count, in the district. So we have a wonderfully diverse district that also creates some challenges for us. We are very fortunate in East Irondequoit that 5 years ago, or maybe some more than that, before I joined the district, folks in the district got busy converting to one-to-one. And so our students have had personal devices that they've taken home for years. And even in our lower grades, our students don't necessarily take the devices home, but they're used to using them. And so when this all came down, we were really confident that our students had tools and that they knew how to use them. And that confidence was both a blessing and a curse. So, we just thought, like, we'll just take stuff home, guys, and off we'll go. We were able to get hotspots into the hands of families that needed them. And so we are confident that our students have tools and they have access. But it was everything that came after that is, the real learning. And so I think everyone on the panel would agree that the tool is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of actually doing something that resembles school while kids are at home. And so as I try to reflect on successes and challenges, I realized that most of our successes and challenges were deeply interconnected. Like, the same thing that was a success was also a challenge. We've had kind of an open approach to our teachers using technology in the district. Up until Ed Law 2D, it was kind of like, if you like it, you can use it. So have at it. And so even though we have a common, a single sign-on, Clever, and we use Schoology at the upper grades and Seesaw at the lower grades, kind of everything after that was non-standardized, meaning, if I like Edpuzzle, I could use it. If I like Flipgrid, I could use that, etc. And I think in the classroom where teachers are controlling for that was not such a big deal. But the minute parents were trying to help kids with a variety of things, and there was this link and that log on and this platform, and this thing does that, and this thing does that. We heard from our families within days, like, you have completely overwhelmed us with all of this stuff, and we don't know what you're doing. And so we had to, like, kind of pare back and pull back and ask teachers to coordinate more with each other, and to be just more thoughtful in terms of their selection of tools, how that would translate to home. And sure, if you were there with the kids, it would be no big deal, but you're not. And so, can we, like, settle down a little bit and just get to a few common things? And I think that is a fascinating message to send to teachers, at the same time that everything is free, and every email that you get is some vendor trying to get you to, like, sign up. It's free. And so we've been in some little circles around that. But helping our teachers see this through the lens of their families has been super helpful. And Dave, just pause me when my 3 minutes are up, or give me a 30 seconds check.
Cheryl, that's terrific, and we can probably go to Kevin now.
Okay.
Appreciate your insights and sharing that. I'm sure we'll have questions again later. Cheryl, thank you so much.
Sure.
And Kevin, I did park the question in the chat box for our panelists. So if you do want to refer back to that before answering, that's totally fine. Thank you, Cheryl. Kevin, you're up.
Got it. Thanks. Good to see everybody. Just Gordy, we used to work together. Gordy, taught you everything you know, right, Gordy? No. And Karen Finter, I see you there from 25 years ago, or however long that was. A bunch of my students, both current and past. It's really nice to see everybody here. It's fantastic. As you heard, I'm the assistant superintendent in Geneva City School District. We're a very diverse and unique small city. Just to run through our numbers, we're about 2,300 students, 42% white population, 14% African American, 10% multiracial, 32% Latino, about 2% Asian. We've got about 61% of our students in free and reduced lunch. 67% of our students have at least one ACE, and about 25% of our students have 4 or more ACEs. Our English as a new language or ENL students, about 10% of those, and about 12% students with disabilities. We're a really interesting community in that we have, not only are we diverse, but we are diverse in a number of ways. So when we talk about technology and equity, we have to always think through the lens, this sort of multi-lens device that we need to look through. So Sean, I'm sure, is going to mention that as leaders and really as teachers, anyone that works in a school district, we're all guardians of equity. And equity in this particular case tends to focus around equity of access. In our case, we need to make sure that we're paying attention to our ENL students, our homeless population. We've got about 200 homeless students, so that's approaching double digits in our school district. Those who have kind of questionable housing, our undocumented families, students in poverty, students in various locations, and the issue of resources. So when I think in Geneva in terms of what does equity of access mean, I think in terms of maybe 3 general terms: logistics, resources, and language or communication. Things like logistics are, like, how do you pick up and drop off electronic devices? Cheryl mentioned East Irondequoit, where I used to work, that they went one-to-one, and we went one-to-one last year, 6 through 12, and we're about 3-to-1 pre-K through 5. So we were emerging into Schoology, and we had done a lot of online work, a lot of personalized learning, and Gordy's going to probably talk about that a little bit. So we had some level of readiness, but in terms of thinking through logistics, picking up and dropping off devices, access, like how do you get students access to broadband? How do you navigate the students who may have 1 or 2 devices in a home, but you've got 5 or 6 students or adults who need to use those devices for various things? The logistics around professional development, making sure that people were kind of topped up for what suddenly happened over the course of a few days. Around resources, I think about parents, and by now their overload in navigating all of this. Also parents who, due to their familiarity or lack of familiarity with the content, especially as you get into the high school and above, their ability to help, even though they may have a desire, their ability to help at home, they struggle sometimes. And then this idea I've got around maybe transition capacity is what we might call it. Transition capacity is, in my head, how resilient are you in making a big shift in your life? So we've all had this crazy COVID thing happen, and now all your kids are home, and maybe you're working from home, or maybe you lost your job. And so all these things have suddenly happened, and this transition has occurred, and your life might be crazy. Some folks can handle that and go, woo, it's wild right now. And other people, their world just falls apart. So there's that. There's the trauma, illness, and grief component of it, both for kids, parents, and staff. Kind of jumping ahead, and I've got a lot to say on this issue, so I can get wordy. But making sure that you have a system in place where you keep track of kids who are either sliding away or who have disappeared electronically or otherwise, and your system enables you to create home visits or some kind of check-in, whether it's through student phones, parent phones, emergency contacts, or actually going to the house, is a great way to keep track of kids and to help them and to help staff as they navigate all this craziness. In our populations, the population that we struggle with and I'm most concerned is the groups where forgetting is the problem. Our ENL population, our homeless population, and our undocumented populations are not ones that will step up and say, hey, you're not meeting our needs. We need to communicate with you around this issue so that you can help our child. What they tend to do is just disappear. And you lose this whole segment of your population unless you're aware of them and you're reaching out to them and you've got good relationships with them. Our successes were around those things: building relationships, getting to houses, having a translator, using this program that we've used for a number of years now, Talking Points, which is a way to text in, say, English, and it translates into another language, and the parent can text in their own language and it translates back to English, or any of 29 or 35, whatever it is, what they're up to, languages. So our successes are around building those personal relationships, having trust. Showing up on an undocumented family's doorstep with a bunch of people is a scary thing to that family, unless you've got a relationship and they've got someone that they can recognize. And so anyway, our successes are around those things: building relationships, getting devices to kids, and not letting them disappear.
Kevin, thank you so much for those insights, and I'm sure we'll have additional questions in the chat box later. And we'd like to move to Sean now. And Sean, welcome, and looking forward to your thoughts.
Well, Kevin used all my important lines, so my intelligent ones. So I'm gonna just pass right on to Gordy. No, seriously, I think that our role at East was the lowest performing school in the lowest performing district in New York State before the University of Rochester partnered with the school board and the state education department to create a school transformation model. That model was deeply rooted in understanding the true nature of the issues at East by surveying students and parents and community members and teachers and staff and administrators, and then creating a plan for transformation. That same approach was taken with this COVID crisis as we use technology to not only create a plan, but to first gather information to better understand the needs of our community. So we use technology to better understand from the context experts. So I would say that as educators, we often pride ourselves on being content experts, if it's math, science, or leadership, but it's the context that matters most, particularly when you're supporting communities that have often been marginalized and disenfranchised. And so better understanding where the digital divide was, better understanding where the nutrition needs were, better understanding where the assets in the communities were also located, allowed us to take care of all those different facets on the hierarchy of need. And so we were able to align community with the basic needs. We were able to better understand and align our resources to provide not only devices, but to talk about internet connection and how to properly use those devices. And now we're at the point where we are continuing to gather information using technology to plan for the reintroduction or the introduction of people back into the school setting. Because to be honest, I'm most concerned with how people transition back and the amount of trauma and anxiety that may occur with that transition. And so we're using technology to make sure that we are reaching out to the community individuals in our behavioral health sectors now, so that we can connect families throughout the summer who may need additional support in transitioning back to school for a variety of.
Every once in a while in class, this happens. I have to rewind him, and then he gets going again.
Kevin, thanks for jumping in. It sounds like Sean might be on pause or a bit of a hiccup at the internet connection. We'll give him just a moment, and then if he doesn't come back, then we'll switch to Gordy. Sean, are you still with us? All right, Gordy, why don't we hop over to you then, if you don't mind? And once again, the question is in the chat box if you'd like to have a refresher there. And then looking forward to your insights as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. So in my role with Edutech servicing Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES as well as Genesee Valley BOCES, we have about 47 component districts as well as our K-12 sites. And so in my role, we've really tried to use technology like this, having those virtual meetings with staff. We've put on professional developments, professional learning opportunities for teachers in all of those districts to help support them with short professional learnings through a Zoom or a Google Meet or whatever it might be, as well as using screencasting software. So a Loom or a Flipgrid for screencasting to deliver quick how-tos, messages they can pass on to parents, and to teaching them how to use the tech. I think the three panelists before me have talked about the overload that parents have felt as well as students when it comes to this online learning. And I think one of the challenges of that really is that this isn't online or remote learning. This is emergency remote learning. We didn't plan for this. We didn't prep for this. We didn't model it for our students or our families. It kind of fell into our laps. So I think that's been one of the biggest challenges in trying to help teachers that I work with use what they already have. Don't try to grab a new tool or the shiny email that comes in and says this is free. Cheryl, I know, talked about that. This looks great. Or I've talked to a colleague over in another district and they're using this, and it's like, yeah, but you haven't thought about, you didn't get a chance to model that for your students. They've never used this. And so that's just another hurdle for them to overcome in their new learning. So trying to help teachers use what they already have, keep it simple, and try not to create a greater inequity in the learning for students, but rather find multiple ways to engage them in the learning. And the technology is, I see Cheryl says, but definitely do talking points. I live in the Geneva City School District, so I have talking points. I've actually just gotten a talking points message. So it is a great tool. But it's tough to start something new. So those have been some of the challenges that I've seen working with teachers is trying to figure out what platform are they going to use, and is it safe? Is it secure? Because we don't want to just throw that security of our students' personally identifiable information out the window because we have a COVID-19 shutdown. This is like hacker's delight right now. Everybody's jumping online, and a lot of people are very naive. And so it's important to remind people of that. And the teachers that I've been working with, they've either had a Zoom bombing happen or had students that have taken over their Google Meet and they haven't, they don't know the platform well enough. So it's a good time to practice and dive in. I'd say for successes we have in our region, we have provided over 100 professional learning sessions and had over close to 3,000 participants in the last 5 weeks. So that's been a huge success to see that, our teachers in the Wayne Finger Lakes and Genesee Valley regions are really hungry for some of this, and they're finding some of that time to do some of this professional learning. We try to keep them short and sweet, 30 minutes. But that's been a huge success, and as well as the perspective. I always feel so privileged to be able to get perspective from 47 different school districts. So then when I'm talking with folks and trying to help guide them find the tech tools that are going to be best fit their needs, to have those different perspectives from a city school district like Geneva and a rural school district like a SOTUS. I really value those perspectives, and we've been able to get teachers together, putting groups together, and not just be about the tech, but be about what is how are you utilizing your curriculum apps to condense this and get the needed standards, right? The priority standards out for students, and practice, right? So that's been huge right now in our region. And I've been just so happy to be a part of it with all of our teachers and educators.
Well, thank you very much, Gordy. Additional perspectives, much appreciated. And I do want to thank our panel so far. And we do have an additional question. And Raffaella is going to bring that question into the conversation now. So Raffaella, I will turn it back to you.
Yes, actually, we also want, as I say, to engage other people in the audience, and I don't see yet any questions in the chat. So I would like people in the audience to think about questions you may want to ask to the panelists as I ask them these sort of final questions for them to go around, which is, if you had to pick one or two things that were the major lessons learned during this period, can you again share what you think those lessons learned are? And then again, I will go back and try to see from the chat who has questions or who wants to add to the conversation by sharing their own experience with this emergency time. So I'll start again with Cheryl and then go through all the panelists.
So one of the things that's fascinating me that I really want to hold on to is equity works both ways. And we have some kids that are absolutely thriving right now. Like, this is a game changer for them, that school this way is working. They are productive. They are engaged. These are kids who are not necessarily productive and engaged in a typical school setting. And I'm just so curious about how do we take probably asynchronous learning, at its heart, and make this a more possible and normal thing, so that kids don't have to feel like they need to be, quote unquote, sent away to have this kind of learning experience, because there are some for whom this is a gift. So I'm just really intrigued about uncovering what that is and who needs it and how do we normalize it. And I think, when we think about teenagers in particular, this idea of asynchronous, right, that I can do it at 3 a.m. if I want to. We have lots and lots of anecdotal data from our teachers that that's when they get texted, or that's when a Schoology notification, pops up, and we can actually see, like, oh, you do all your work between midnight and 4 a.m. And that's just real. That's just biology. That's how kids function. For some of our kids, is what they need right now because they are caretaking. Some of them are working. And it just really makes me wonder, how do we hold on to that for the kids who need it? So that's a big aha for me.
Cheryl, thank you so much. And I do want to encourage our panelists. We are getting some questions in the chat box. If you could, as you're not talking or as you're not presenting, if you could take a quick peek at the chat box and maybe work that into your conversation as well. So Cheryl, thank you. And let's go to Kevin again.
Yeah, so what was this one? This was around lessons learned, right? So lesson learned would be, I have kind of two responses. One is like on the teacher student level, and the other one is on more like a district kind of policy preparation level. As far as at the teacher classroom level, having teachers have experience with professional development that is kind of forward looking, and this is a change, this is something new, this is something innovative. If you prep those things and then something like this happens, you have people going, oh yeah, there's that thing that we used, I learned about that, I just need a tune-up, as opposed to, I have no idea what you're talking about, how are we possibly going to do this thing online? So always thinking ahead, always being forward looking is really helpful, and preparing your teachers in a very concrete way for how to make that happen, which also means you've got to have people like Gordy, who, when he was at Geneva, was what we call a PL coach, personalized learning coach, who are on the ball with all of the latest technology, instructional, curricular, and forward-thinking ideas to help staff one-to-one if required, and to be available to help them through some of those rough patches. On a broader scale, the takeaways are around lobbying in the political realm for broadband access, cheaper access to internet for students and parents, families who don't have access due to resources, whether it's money or they live in a place where they can't get access. Engaging the community and engaging the politicians in whatever your place is. And in my case, it happens to be a city in the county, and representatives at the state and national level, engaging politically and saying we need to have help for students who can't have access, and we need to have help around community Wi-Fi and that sort of thing. If we're going to ask kids to do things in this way, then we got to have the infrastructure in place. Also, one of the things that was not surprising to me, because Geneva is a pretty special place, but I'm sure it's the case anywhere, there is a whole ton of helpers out there, and they want to get involved. And when you engage with your civic leaders and those folks who are all about the volunteering, they will come out of the woodwork to help you do anything. And volunteers, whether it was staff helping or community members helping, collect and repair computers and hand out work and deliver stuff and pick things up and navigate the whole food process. Without them, it doesn't work. So making sure that you connect with whatever the local arrangement is in your city, town, county. There's a ton of people who want to help, and they're just ready and willing to go as long as you give them a forum to do it.
Kevin, thank you. And Sean, can we move to you, please?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Sorry, I'm going to leave my video off, and maybe that helps my bandwidth. I think my son's playing Fortnite or something up there, so we'll see. I would say that our biggest challenge, that was the question, was making an assumption that we knew what was best for our community before asking them. And so there were a lot of deficit-minded comments like, if we give our kids laptops, we're not going to bring them back, or none of our kids have Wi-Fi. They don't have computers at home. And we found out that wasn't our challenge, really. Our challenge was more so around parents saying, I have 3 kids in the RCSD, one attends East. If I have only 1 kid with a laptop, I need my personal one for work all day. I'm working from home. How do I have 3 kids share 1 laptop in a household where I have to work all day and be like ourselves, working on Zoom or other mediums? So once we better understood what the issues were, we were able to create a plan and then convince the district to also provide laptops to their students. When we first tried to roll ours out, the district was really hesitant about doing so because they didn't have a district-wide plan. And they saw us giving it out as being an equity. And I had to help them understand equity is not equality. And inequity is our kids not having them and everybody else in our community does. And so I think having those basic assumptions and letting the data drive what our response was going to be, and using technology to then articulate and voice those changes and that access was a game changer for us. But without that initial kind of needs assessment, if you will, we may have spent a lot of time and energy doing what we thought was best for our families without engaging those context experts.
Sean, thank you so much. Great insights. And then Gordy, what are some lessons learned? I know, Gordy, you've been active in the chat box as well, so I'll encourage our participants who have asked questions in the chat box to have a look there. And Gordy, thank you for that, and take it away with some lessons learned from the experience in your realm.
Yeah, I think some of the quick lessons is less is more. Record everything. When we talk about the inequities of, you have teachers that are trying to hold a synchronous session and, 10 students have shown up for it, but there's, 15 that didn't. If you have that recorded, they can watch that at their own time and making it more asynchronous. So I think that those are some quick lessons. And I really hope that this acts as a catalyst for better leveraging instructional technology moving forward. I cringe anytime I hear anybody say, I just can't wait to get back to normal. And I say, I don't want to ever go back. I want to go forward to normal. We want to be in school with our students and the children, but I don't want to see us go, oh, we're back. I don't need to use this tool anymore. I don't need to leverage this technology anymore. So I really hope that a lot of teachers have learned how much of a great asset the instructional technology can be moving forward. And I hope that this planning that districts are doing isn't for just right now. A lot of the procedures that are being put in place for right now can also be put in place for emergency snow days, right? If you run out of snow days, why do we have to, tack an extra day on to a break instead of having a remote learning day? It's just a great way to rethink that. And so I hope that a lot of the lessons learned during this emergency remote learning are helping districts put procedures and policies in place for future remote learning access and leveraging the technology.
Gordy, thank you. More interesting points. And thank you to our panelists for all the great insights shared so far. And Raffaella, let me go back to you to take us to the next step.
Yes, so I've noticed that again, certain questions have been answered in the chat. So maybe I will do again a little bit facilitating and picking on questions that have not and that may be also somewhat related. So there was a questions about using TAs in this and aides in this particular moment in time. And there was also a question about parents and how parents could be working in this period of time. I'm putting them together because in a sense, again, is how do you think teachers have used these other resources in this time of remote teaching? And I'm not going to go through all four of you. So if any of you wants to, again, start answering that question, we probably will pick a couple of them and then move to another one.
Go ahead, Gordy.
Okay. So yeah, I had mentioned in the chat box with TAs, it's been powerful for students to see the adult faces they're used to seeing. So having them being a part of any sort of meetings, having them be a part of any of the screencasts that are being created, especially if they've been working with a team of teachers regularly, it's great to have those tasks and have them start to build some of that learning for the future, right? Building those asynchronous kind of how-tos that can go to students and go to parents. So I think of that as a great way to utilize TAs and aides in this time period.
Anybody else who wants to add to that?
Yeah,
Kevin?
our TAs have sometimes we have bilingual TAs and also TAs that have great relationships with kids. So they're a big help when it comes to connecting with kids that are drifting a little bit or helping to connect with families that are struggling at any given time. So they've been a huge help for us and our teachers.
Great. Nobody has spoken about parents yet, so I wonder if Sean or Cheryl would be happy to share something about, again, how you have tried to help parents, or have you included parents in your instruction?
Mm-hmm. I want to reinforce what Sean said starting out about finding out from families, what instead of making assumptions. That's been very powerful for us and awakening. We posted, and several people wrote this in the chat box, several videos, short videos for parents on our website. They've been actually really helpful just to be able to say, when you're in a conversation with a parent, here, I'm going to drop this link for you. This will take you through that, or, I also think it's super fascinating how many of the boundaries that teachers seem to feel about communicating with parents have in a lot of cases fallen away, and they're talking to parents by Facebook message, by Twitter, by text messaging. Talking points is very powerful, I'll say again, but and it just seems like there has been a false barrier between teachers and parents. I hear sometimes I'm afraid, or they're going to be mad at me, or these kinds of things, and I just don't see that right now. And it gives me hope that will be sustained going forward. and that maybe we're building new relationships with parents through this. We're going to do a virtual town hall with families, like a community meeting by grade level, principal led. That's coming up on Zoom, and that made me think about PTA and how much challenge it is for folks, just because people have lives outside of, they work and evenings and childcare and all those things. And why couldn't we just reinvent PTA to be virtual, and hear more voices going forward? So I think we have a lot of opportunity here, actually.
I agree with you, Cheryl. I attended a family meeting last week, and I wanted to talk to them about our budget update and then about reopening of schools and sports. And we had more parents engaged then than we've had in the past. And so I think, to Gordy's point, the path forward makes a ton of sense. And the idea that we have to physically be in a place to be engaged has changed forever. And so we have to capitalize off of that and use that more thoughtfully and make sure parents have access. And then to Gordy's point, to record those messages and make that conversation available to others is also important. So I think that we are definitely in a new and an improved space with the use of technology. And my greatest fear is that people will go back to the old ways because they didn't authentically want to hear from parents in the first place. Mm. So this is a whole new, this ups the game. I think Rudy Crew, the former superintendent of Miami-Dade, I think he's not Medgar Evers, he wrote a book and he talks about the demand parents. And demand parents are those who that we help understand from and we provide information to, and that the system becomes responsive to their identified need, their self-identified needs. I believe technology is going to create a new cadre of demand parents that are going to change our school systems forever. And I think that's a positive thing.
This is really a great way to end our session on a positive note, because I think too often we have got caught into issues like, again, the kids don't have internet, the kids don't have devices, we can't do things. And what I'm hearing is instead that several of you are really looking at what are new opportunities that this experience has shown us, what are possible things that we actually want to keep moving forward and that we may want to in fact institutionalize as things that work well in any kind of circumstances. So it sounds like, again, there are still silver lining in this, but also great opportunities for really learning and moving forward differently. So I want to pass it back to Holly and Andrea if they want to do any kind of final word or synthesis for us.
Thank you. This has just been incredibly powerful and more than we could have hoped for. This idea initially was just, let's have like an open forum. Let's make sure that our current K-12 school leadership candidates can learn alongside with practitioners and really see what the problems of practice look and sound like when we're kind of in the moment and when we're still processing, when we're still engaged, when we're facing challenges, when we're trying to share resources. And it has been amazing to see how this has grown. We have over 31 folks joining tonight, and it was a really powerful conversation. I love this notion that this is a new and improved space and that this is opportunity. And you each have really talked about the ways that we are removing barriers, right? Breaking down barriers and thinking about a wider platform for engagement and being responsive to our community, our students, our families. So just what an incredible, it's like humbling to hear how you are in the middle of the challenge and engaged and sharing with each of us where you are in this and the amazing work that you've been doing. We know that we are very fortunate for the partnerships we have in the community. We're so thankful that we've been able to do this with our professional centers here at Warner. And thank you to Lita for coordinating. Again, to the panelists, we just appreciate that. And I'm really struck by the learning taking place in the chat as well. So this notion that we've got panelists engaged, we're gonna videotape, we're recording the session, we'll make that available, and the way that all of us are able to continue to contribute through the chat has been very powerful. So we're really thankful for this. Andrea, any last thoughts?
I would just second what you just said and thank everybody for their involvement. This equity series was something that Sean, Holly, and I really talked about back in January that we wanted to start to use to be able to engage not only our current students and our community partners, but also our graduates and our school and district leaders. And so really this is just the beginning of our learning in this process. And we hope that when we reach out to you with future opportunities that you got a lot out of this and will join us again.
Thanks, everyone. And if there are comments that you want to leave for us in the chat about ways that you would like to, topics you'd like us to present on and engage moving forward, or a different way that we can continue this conversation. As Andrea mentioned, we are still learning in this endeavor, and we look forward to your feedback about what's important to you and how we can best proceed. Thanks, everyone.